must follow the law. The law says...
Glorious. Is it a lawsuit? Probably. Why not?
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Buckle Up. It's the Law with attorney Larry Forman. Folks, today we're going to continue with our saga of the closing arguments by the prosecution. This is part 2 of 2 in the Donna Adelson murder trial. Now, folks, once again, remember, we are watching this very closely. We are analyzing it from the perspective of a trial attorney, a perspective you may not get anywhere else. And I hope that not only will you be educated by the time you finish watching this video, I also hope you become a subscriber if you're not already. So feel free to subscribe to the channel. And most importantly, I hope you learn something and you take something away from this. So it's not just, you're not watching the closing argument, even if you've already seen it and you're new to this channel, you go, I've already seen this video. Why should I watch it again? Well, you haven't watched it with my analysis. And folks, I try to educate my audience. I try to inform my audience. And I hope that by the time you're done watching this video, you're going to walk away a little bit more informed, a little bit more knowledgeable, and you're going to be able to challenge other people with the new knowledge that you possess. So, with that in mind, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I am an attorney. I've been practicing law for over a decade. I have over 50 jury trials over my own belt. So I am no stranger to jury trials. I have won trials, I have lost trials, and I have represented thousands of people in court. So with that in mind, let's dive right in. If you remember where we left off, the prosecution was going chronologically, and we got to the point where we are on murder day, July 18th, 2014. As you all remember, I left you on a cliffhanger. If somehow the algorithm brought you to this particular video, understand that this is part 2 of 2 because the closing is very long. It's about a 2-hour-long video, so I broke it down into 2 pieces. This is part 2. Go check out part 1 because we're going right into the middle of the prosecution's closing, and we're going to finish it out. Let's go.
July 18th, murder day. July 18th, 8:11 a.m., the defendant texts Wendy about the TV repair appointment. The TV repair appointment was planned for between 8 a.m. and noon that day. And she says, they are on their way over now to help you with the TV sets in your living room. In case she didn't know which TV set it was. This is the TV that Charlie bought as a divorce present because it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Could it be a coincidence that this TV is also the alibi for Wendy on the day of the murder?
Exactly. I've been saying it all along.
While he's being murdered by a hitman. And then, as we know, the defendant later uses TV as code when she's speaking on those wiretap calls. 8:20 a.m. Wendy texts Charlie, "This is so sweet." We don't know what it means, but she just texted him that, and then she deleted it sometime between the time it was sent, 8:20 a.m., and the time that her phone was cell-brighted or down.
Wait a second. Remember, we are always keeping in the back of our minds the culpability of Harvey and Wendy alongside Donna, Charlie, Katie, and the rest of the gang. That is so sweet, sent at 8:20 a.m. If that is not just a consciousness of guilt, but almost, I wouldn't even say almost, I would say it's an admission of guilt. That is so sweet, sent from Wendy to Charlie and then deleted because she probably freaked out like, I probably shouldn't be sending that. Oh, how sweet of you, Charlie. You're taking care of my Dan Markel problem for me. You're going to kill him so that he can't take away my license to practice law. Oh, you're so sweet. These people, are you joking?
Downloaded at the police station later that day. 9:04 a.m. Dan Markel leaves a voicemail for Wendy telling her he's headed to the gym and wants to know if it's okay for him to pick up the boys early and take them swimming that afternoon. Wendy says no, he cannot take the boys swimming after school that day. Meanwhile, what's going on across town? The Prius is following Dan Markel into the gym parking lot. There it is at 9:16 a.m. 9:19 a.m. to 9:37 a.m., Charlie and Wendy talk for 18 minutes. Wendy and Dan argue back and forth a bit about him wanting to take the boys swimming, but after getting off the phone with Charlie, Wendy concedes the argument with Dan and says, okay, you can pick them up and bring them back to me when you're done swimming. But of course the swimming plan didn't happen because Dan Markel was killed. 10:38 a.m., the Prius follows Mr. Markel out of the gym parking lot. 10:45 a.m., Mr. Markel is shot twice in the head, in his vehicle, in his garage. 10:51, the Prius is captured fleeing the scene on a city bus camera. 11:01, Mr. Geiger calls 911. 11:15, law enforcement arrives at the scene and sets up a perimeter. Dan Markel is rushed to the hospital. He's treated, but the damage is catastrophic. It's not survivable. And he passes away about 14 hours later. 12:30, the hitmen, now headed back south, turn their phones on. They had turned them off for the homicide. They turn them back on. The first phone call that either one of them made.
By the way, how Brian Koberger of you to, okay, I'm about to commit a crime. Let me turn my phone off real quick so they can't track my location. And then as soon as I'm done committing my crimes, okay, turn my phone back on again, because that's not suspicious at all.
Is Sigfredo Garcia to Catherine Magbanua. They want their money. Where is Magbanua getting money? From Charlie. 12:45, so while the killers are calling Magbanua and heading south, Wendy goes out of her way to visit the crime scene, encounters a roadblock and crime scene tape. Per the officer at the roadblock, she would have been able to clearly see the police activity at her former residence. The residence where her children currently lived half the time and where they woke up that morning. Yet she abruptly turns around and leaves. She does not make contact with the officer to ask what's going on. She does not call the police to inquire. She does not call Dan Markel to say, are you okay? There's a bunch of cops at the house. She does not call the daycare to make sure her children arrive that morning and are okay. Instead, she proceeds to the ABC Liquors, purchases her bullet bourbon at 12:49. She's later approached by law enforcement at lunch and gives a law enforcement interview in which she says, my parents have more reason to dislike Danny than almost anyone else. This echoes Rob Adelson's testimony that his mother hated Dan Markel at the time of his murder.
And we covered Dan's testimony on my channel. If you have not seen it, go and check it out. It is a doozy.
And even from the periphery, it was known to Ryan Fitzpatrick
And we also have done Wendy Adelson, so go check it out as well.
as Charlie's friend that his mother did not like Dan Markel. In her law enforcement interview, Wendy suggests her mother is someone who is very angry at Dan Markel. She suggests Charlie when asked if someone might do this on her behalf. She calls her mom, and the defense has put that call into evidence. 7:04 p.m., she tells her mom that there's been a shooting, and afterwards, Wendy expresses relief that they sounded surprised. 8:59, defendant arrives at Charlie's with the murder money. How do we know she went there and that they aren't just old people that drive really slow? Well, there's a text message outside your house. I guess we're going to find out what that means, but I guess it's not going to be outside your house. And he says 10 men. Guess we're going to find out what that means, but apparently it doesn't mean I'll be there in 10 minutes and meet you there and get the money. About 10 o'clock, Catherine Magbanua joins Charlie at the house. Here they are making plans for that meeting. Next slide, please. Charlie answers the door with a gun in his hand. He's extremely amped up. He tells Magbanua, my parents just left. They both end up taking Xanax and sleeping over there for the night. The next morning, July 19th, 2014. So this is early morning hours, 1:25 a.m. Yeah, 1:25 a.m. Donna and Harvey arrive at their Orlando hotel. In the morning, Charlie puts the money in Catherine Magdanova's trunk. She's seen at 9:33 a.m. approximately, heading south toward Rivera's house, where she's going to meet up ultimately with Rivera and Garcia and give them the money. Garcia takes the money out of the trunk where Charlie Adelson put it and divides it up between the three of them. Magdanova says she did not count her cut, but we know she put some of it in the bank, creating the largest monthly cash spike of any of the records we examined for her bank. This cash spike also occurs at a time when Magdanova was not employed. Rivera says his understanding was the job paid $100,000 total to be split between the three, and that the cut that he received was roughly a third of that at $35,000. We don't know the amount of Garcia's cut, but we know he got at least enough to buy a car and a motorcycle. All right, so July 20th, the defendant and Harvey Adelson take Wendy and the boys back to South Florida. 2 days after, not even 48 hours after Dan Markell is shot. They're gone. Relocation granted. On the way, Wendy receives a call from Detective Isom. She tells him that the call's breaking up, and she hangs up, afterwards referring him to her lawyer. Catherine Magdanova that day, or thereabouts, opens her Ziploc bag of money and finds her cut to be $100 bills stapled together in $1,000 stacks. How we know Charlie keeps his money. She also notes that her cut is damp and moldy. She mentions this to Charlie, and he tells her that his mother washed the money. Not like laundered, like washed. Rob Adelson gets a call from Donna Adelson advising him.
Sorry, that never gets old. A money laundering scheme by Donna Adelson. Like, come on, dude. You can't put the money through the laundry and then call it laundered money. Like, that's not how it works, honey. I'm sorry. It's so funny.
Not to talk to the FBI. What? Rob Adelson gets a call from this defendant advising him not to talk to the FBI, just in case they call. He says, well, I already did. She says, well, you don't know anything anyway, and hangs up. July 24th, 2014, Dan Markell was laid to rest in Canada. His children were not in attendance. August of 2014, the defendant registers the older child for flag football under the last name Adelson. His name is Markell. This is 1 month after their father was killed, and already he's being erased from their lives. Within 1 year, their names would be legally changed to Adelson. Nine 12/14. The defendant refers to the younger child by the last name Adelson. 9/17/14. The first check is written to Catherine Magdanova, signed by this defendant. This is the murder money. Even though Charlie has signing authority on this account, he could write these checks. He chooses to connect his elderly mother to a murder payment? If she wasn't involved, there is no reason in the world why she would write these checks. The defense said in opening that Charlie told Donna to write the checks because it was his business. But half of these checks were written after the business was sold back to Harvey on October 2nd, 2015. Regardless of who owned the business,
Rule, members of the jury, you will rely on your memory of the evidence in this case. You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. And regardless of who owned the business at the time, all the Adelsons had an interest in the Adelson Institute.
So you want to tell me that Harvey after taking over the practice, is not going to start asking questions. Why are these checks being written to Catherine? I've never seen a Catherine. Is she a nurse at our dental practice? Is she an assistant? Does she run the phone? Does she man the, like, what does she do? What are her job duties? Who is she? Why is she on payroll? Can we take her off payroll? What do you mean we can't? Why? Why are you doing this? You think Harvey would never ask a single question like that? Wonder where his money is going? Why checks are being written to an employee who never shows up for work? And you want to tell me Harvey doesn't have any knowledge whatsoever about Catherine McBenoit? I mean, seriously? You want to tell me his hands are totally clean and totally washed, totally laundered? Did he put his hands through the washing machine? I'm serious, though. Harvey Adelson definitely has blood on his hands. There is no question about it. It's just the proof is literally right before us. It's in between. It's written between the lines. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
All three of them had signing authority on that checkbook. But the defendant is the one that wrote that check. September 17, 2014, and the 43 checks that followed. Is that consistent with what we've heard? That she would just write the checks and not ask any questions? We've heard that she is assertive, she's controlling, she's a details person. She ran that business and those people's lives. She ran a tight ship. We've seen her weekly planners where she plans out every detail of her own life, making meticulous notes. She kept detailed information about Dan Markel and lots of other things. Rob Adelson testified that she's not the type of person who's just going to do something someone tells her to do. She's going to be asking questions. And we heard that Charlie testified that he told his mother about extortion. He says he was being extorted, right? All right, let's fast forward to October of 2015. Charlie's had a couple girlfriends since the murder and is now dating June Mchinda. Remember her? June, one of Charlie's girlfriends that testified, she said they were enjoying a fairy tale relationship in October of 15. During her relationship with Charlie, June observes that Charlie packages his money in an unusual way. $100 bills stapled into $1,000 stacks. June also observes the defendant to be in control of the family and super involved with the grandchildren. However, she found it odd that nobody in the family seemed curious about who killed Dan Markel, nor did they seem upset about the murder. Rob Adelson also noted a complete lack of curiosity on the part of his mother about this murder in the family. When he asked what the defendant thought happened to Danny, she said, quote, "I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't concern me." As someone who liked details and who always stayed on top of everything, her total lack of interest in who killed her former son-in-law, her grandchildren's father.
It implies knowledge, right? Think about it. If there's a pen on the table and you took the pen and I ask, hey, did you see my pen? And you go, no, I didn't see a pen. Was there a pen? I don't know. Not interested. You know, whatever. But if somebody else took the pen, you know, you would say, oh, I saw somebody else take the pen. It's interesting. I wonder who that was. I don't know who that was. We need to figure it out where your pen went, you know, and that's just a pen. Now imagine in this scenario, Dan gets murdered. Donna's son-in-law, Rob and Charlie's brother-in-law, Wendy's ex-husband, the father of her children gets erased from the face of the earth, and everybody's like, well, anyway, what's for dinner, honey? They have no curiosity. They have no interest. They're not digging. They're like, the prosecutor is saying very aptly, she says, this was a woman that was meticulous. She needed to know everything. She wanted to know everything about everything. Always. And all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, somebody took him out. Anyway, don't really care. It implies knowledge at the very least. Now, of course, It can go further. You can go further. It implies complicity. It implies guilt, you know. But at the very least, guaranteed you have knowledge. Because how can you not be curious? I would be curious. Anybody in the right mind would be curious. June was curious as to why they were not curious. You know what I mean? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. A part of the family has been severed and nobody's asking any questions? Doesn't make any sense.
Is totally out of character. From July of 14 to April of 16.
And by the way, for the record, I just want to say once again, and I said it before in the previous video, I absolutely love how the prosecution is just going chronologically. They're telling the story. They're telling the tale. They started with, if you have not seen this, it's in the first video. Go check it out. They started with before Wendy and Dan met. Who was Dan? Very briefly. And then after they met. And then the kids. And then of course, spent a lot of time on the divorce filings and how contentious the divorce was. And being snarky about, you know, oh, it was not contentious at all, was it? You know, like making it look like to the jury that everything that they're saying is bullcrap. And you can't believe it. You can't trust it. You can't put it past them because the facts are what they are. You can't change the facts. And I'm going to give you the facts. And she has. She has been going chronologically leading up to the killing and now post-killing. Everything that has happened and is happening, you know, in hindsight, of course. So it's a beautiful closing. I can follow it. I'm sure you can too. The jury is following it. She's telling a story. She's going chronologically. You know, July 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, August of 2014. Then we'll go into next year probably if we're not already there. I think we are. I think we're in October of 2015, if I'm not mistaken. But you see, it's a very simple, easy to follow route. When you have a closing like this, I don't want to say you win by default, but that means you have something. That means you have a story. Sometimes these stories are for the defense. Remember Alan Jackson's closing in the Karen Reed trial. Again, another video if you have not seen, you absolutely should check out. The entire Karen Reed series is a must watch if you're a true crime junkie, and it's on my channel. I dissect the most important players. Some trials, I think I even covered every single witness, period. So you don't miss anything at all. I think I may have skipped one or two witnesses in the second trial, and that was it. I've done every other one. And when you watch Jackson's closing in the Karen Reed second trial, in the first trial, I think it was David Yannetti who did that closing. Or I could be wrong. I'm sorry. I think David Yannetti did the opening and then Jackson did the closing in the first trial. And then in the second trial, Jackson did both the opening and the closing. Regardless, the opening is also phenomenal. Phenomenal. But the closing was so powerful. And no matter the fact that the judge limited him to like an hour and he ended up going like an hour and 10 minutes or something like that, folks, it was one of the most powerful closings I've ever heard in my entire life. I even attempted my own closing argument for that trial, and it's also on my channel, so go check it out. And that was really fun to record. But again, why am I telling you all of this? I am telling you this because closings are so important. They're so vital. This is the chance to summarize. The jury has already made up their mind, by the way. If you are at closing and they're still scratching their heads, somebody did something wrong. They need to be fully aware of everything that has been happening in the trial. And the closing is just a summary of everything they've already heard. Like I said, I subscribe to the school of thought that you win your case in opening. Sometimes on a rare occasion, you may win it during jury selection. Very rarely though, because the jury doesn't get any specifics. You just get like open-ended questions for the most part. But in opening, when you start to tell your story, that's when you capture them. That's when you're like, here's what happened. Believe me. And if they do, and it's, you know, you're the defense attorney, let's say, and it looks like your client did not commit the crime, then they're going to start going, I'm going to be looking for that. You know, and if it's confirmed and the prosecution cannot overcome that hurdle, well, then you will win. Or vice versa. The prosecution has a great story. The defense kind of fumbles. Remember the defense's opening? If you have not seen it, go check it out. It's on my channel as well. That opening was so bad by the defense, so disjointed. I was like, what is she talking? She was doing the prosecution's. It was like a prosecution's opening 2.0. Like I said, I can't wait to do the defense's closing because it's going to be a disaster. And then, of course, the prosecution will have a chance at rebuttal. Like I said, in Florida, prosecution goes first, then the defense, and then the prosecution rebuts. It's a unique system to kind of sandwich the defense. I don't like it. In Kentucky, the defense goes first, prosecution goes second. I like that better because at least I get to talk without, somebody talking before me and then after me. They just talk after me, and that's it. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
Donna Adelson got everything she wanted. Wendy and the kids were in South Florida where she could drop them off and pick them up, manage their schoolwork, their tennis, their piano lessons, and have her sunshines with her every day. All the while, she's steady paying for the murder of their father. Everyone is living their best life, thinking they've gotten away with murder until the bump. Everything changed on April 19th, 2016, when the bump occurred. The undercover approaches Donna and hands her a piece of paper. The most human reaction in the world is to look at the paper. Uh-oh. The defense told you in opening that this defendant is a normal person just like you and me. There is nothing normal about the way she conducts herself in the minutes, hours, and days after the undercover approaches her with that paper. The bump and the wire were designed to expose the co-conspirators and their roles in this conspiracy, and it did. Here, we're just 10 minutes later. There's only one thing a normal person would do if approached on the street by a stranger who appears to be threatening harm to them in some way. A normal, or maybe I should say an innocent person would, 1, look at the paper. She didn't do that. 2, get to safety. Get help, contact law enforcement or your husband or somebody that's going to come help you. Get somewhere safe. What you would not do is lead the bad guy right to the grandchildren. The last thing a normal, innocent person would do is go get her little grandchildren and walk right back down the same block with them where this stranger just approached her. But that is exactly what she does. Then she gets on the phone with Charlie and says absolutely nothing about Dan Markel. There's pictures on the paper. What she does say on the wire, which by the way is direct evidence, I know y'all like that, some direct evidence. When Charlie asked Donna on State's 99 call A,
What's that?
does it involve me or other people? Well, probably both of us. That is direct evidence. If anyone in that jury room wants to acquit her, make them tell you how that is not a confession. In call B, Charlie calls back because he can't.
By the way, that statement right there, that's called empowering the jury. For those of you who may not be familiar, it's a trial lawyer concept. When you have something that is really damning and it's really, really powerful, really good, and everything else may be like a little wishy-washy or circumstantial, whatever. Notice how she highlighted, this is direct evidence of guilt. If you think everything else is circumstantial, when you have 1 or 2 of you, when you go back to that room and say, look, I don't think she did it, there's not enough here, because you got to have a unanimous verdict. All 12 people must agree unanimously. We agree, convict Donna Adelson. But if 1 or 2 people are like, you know what, I don't know, it seems very far-fetched, she's like, use this. Make them tell you how Donna's words, essentially a confession, well, this involves both of us, it's a picture of Dan Markel, we got a problem, Charlie, we got a problem. Plus the circumstantial evidence that she did not hesitate to walk with the 2 grandchildren right past the same spot where she was just approached by the agent. When she didn't know it was an agent, she could have been an extorter. He could have carried a gun. He could have killed both of them. She didn't have a care in the world. She didn't worry. That's evidence of a guilty mind. That's evidence of a guilty conscience. Because she's like, if I'm being approached, well, that may be Katie McBenoit and the 2 guys who carried out the act, or I think at the time they thought it was only one that they hired. He brought his buddy along. long. I'm sure the buddy regrets that decision, but whatever. What's done is done. And she's just like, oh God, more extortion, you know, more money we gotta pay. Fine, we'll figure it out, yada, yada, yada. It's so nonchalant, so calm. The way that these people, they've taken a life vicariously through another person, but they orchestrated that act. And I just don't understand how you can be so calm, cool, and collected about it.
And he asked his mother, will you send me a picture of the bump flyer?
Yeah, let me do this. Do you want to take a picture of the letter and send me for something again?
No, I don't want to do that. Well, why not? Why not? Normal, nice little old lady who knows nothing about this murder and has nothing to do with it. If Charlie's the one making you write the checks and Charlie's the one that knows something about it, send him a picture of it. He's asking for it. She doesn't want to do that. Why not?
Because she's guilty.
Call C. Charlie calls back to say, don't talk about things in the apartment. Oh, obviously.
Because it may be bugged.
Obviously. We can't talk about things in the apartment. What's obvious? Is it obvious to you?
What is exactly what they asked for?
This TV was probably about 5. She's the original code talker. This TV, and look what he says. Well, they asked you for $5,000. He decodes it. He's not the one talking in code. He's decoding it and saying what he's picking up what she's putting down. There's no TV mentioned by the undercover operative that approached Donna Adelson on the street. Couple big takeaways for you, please. Innocent people do not talk in code. Second big takeaway, TV is code for the murder throughout this case. You got Charlie's joke, Wendy's chilling statement to Jeff Lacasse, the alibi of the TV, and now here we've got this TV again. A TV that's the alibi for Wendy. It sat broken for over a month so that a repairman could come out to be her alibi on the morning of the murder. An appointment that her parents set up for her, which was pointless because the TV was smashed and of course could not be repaired. Then she claimed she had an 18-minute phone call with Charlie about the fact that a smashed TV can't be fixed before she got in her car and went to the crime scene, where she did not get out of her car or make any phone calls or make any inquiries about what was going on at the house where her kids lived. Then Donna says,
wouldn't you, Wendy, by the way, another consciousness of guilt argument for Wendy, or against Wendy, I should say. As a mother, wouldn't you have like a complete panic attack, a full-on freak out? Are my kids okay? Are my kids okay? Are my kids okay? If there's police strewn about Dan's house where her kids could be. Oh, I know where my kids are. I know they're not with him. It's fine. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that for a fact unless you had something to do with it? You had your hand in it. You helped plan it. You helped orchestrate it. Wendy. Like I said, you need to go check out her testimony. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments below what you think about Wendy. Do you think her hands are dirty? Do you think she is guilty? Let me know. I'm curious. I will say this though, on top of everything. If you watch her testimony, in the beginning, you will see that I was very inclined to kind of go, well, okay, is it possible she didn't know? Because I didn't know anything about the case. Not as much as I know now, I should say. And very shortly thereafter, I realized, wait a minute, I've been fooled. She's guilty as sin. You know what I mean? So she's very crafty, this woman, but she's not as crafty as she thinks she is.
that the undercover mentioned an ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
whereby, without knowing which ex-girlfriend, Charlie calls not his most recent ex-girlfriend, not the one before that. He only calls one, Catherine Magbanua, because that's the only one he did a murder with. Because he probably did have a general idea what his mother was talking about. When Charlie brings up going to the police, his mother says, that's not a good idea. Why not? Then instead of notifying the police, Charlie and the defendant leave the safety of her very secure building and meet at a marina just 300 yards from where she was approached by the undercover. They were observed speaking very intensely to each other in low tones. After that meeting, Charlie goes to Dolce Vita. This is the restaurant where he meets up with Catherine Magbanua, and we are able to capture some of that conversation that was had there. In that recording, we hear Charlie make statements that are not only incriminating, but that also are totally inconsistent with the defense that he would later offer at trial. Pause on the wiretap here for a moment just to go to what his defense was and what we've learned about that defense. I told you earlier that he said that Magbanua, Garcia, and Rivera acted alone. They just came to Tallahassee and killed Dan Markel, kind of in the hopes that they would get paid. There were several pieces of evidence that Charlie had to explain, and he designed a defense that he thought would do that. First, he had to explain that he's got this close connection between his girlfriend and the hitman. So the obvious defense there is, she heard me griping about Markel and she thought she was doing me a favor, so she did it on her own. Well, the problem with that is, normally you're not going to have your extortionist spend the night with you. You're not going to have the woman that has murdered your former brother-in-law spend the night with you. You're not going to inquire about her plans to go to the pool the next morning if she's, just murdered your ex-brother-in-law. So to explain these messages, he testified that he did not believe she was a part of it. She wasn't one of the extortionists. I was extorted by the killers. I had nothing to do with it. No one in my family had anything to do with it. But I thought that Magbanua was just a victim of the hitmen too. She was a go-between for them. She was protecting him from them. All the money he and his mom were paying her, cash and checks, were going to the hitmen, not for the benefit of Catherine Magbanua. Even the checks that were being deposited into her bank account, he said he believed she was taking out and giving the money to the killers. It was just funneling through her account so she could get insurance for her kids. So Charlie testified that he had previously mentioned to Magbanua the $1 million offer that his family was going to give Dan Markel, and from that she deduced, he's got a bunch of money. So she ran her mouth to her associates, and her associates took it upon themselves somehow to figure out who Dan Markel is and where he was and kill him on their own.
Cute story,
For
bro.
Charlie, it was Katie alone that came to him on the night of the murder and demanded money on behalf of the hitmen, with the threat that if he didn't pay, they would kill him or other members of his family. Since he didn't have that much money, Magbanua then negotiated a layaway plan with the hitmen for him to pay her monthly to go toward this amount of money that the hitmen were demanding. He agreed. He opened up his safe, not at gunpoint or anything, and gave her all the money that was in there. And because she needed to show proof of employment to get insurance, that's why that money was funneling through her account. It was all for the extortionist. The problem for Charlie with that was that he had already agreed to put Magbanua on the payroll between the two trips. You see here in June, he hadn't done it yet, but he says, no problem. Okay, so he'd already agreed to do it before she allegedly extorted him. Even though he had signing authority, it's this defendant that wrote those 44 checks. So if he's being extorted, why doesn't he write the checks? It's this extortion theory that we're saying that the defendant adopted when she heard Charlie's testimony and texted everyone she knew that what he just said on the witness stand was the truth. There's a concept in the law known as adoptive admissions. That's when one party makes a statement and the statement is adopted as the truth by another person. So when Charlie says in those first couple wire calls, if there's a threat, you go to the police, it's of interest that Donna doesn't say, what do you mean if there's a threat? We've been extorted for 2 years. There's been a threat for 2 years. Charlie did tell his best friend Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump. So what I want to highlight here is the difference between their conduct during this alleged extortion that was going on for 2 years versus the way they act after the bump, which we know was a ruse, but was supposed to be like a blackmail effort. So Charlie tells Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump. He also tells him about the confrontation with Garcia in the roadway on July 1st, 2014, but he never previously confided in Ryan Fitzpatrick about, even though it's his best friend, about being extorted for 2 years by this girlfriend of his or her associates. Ryan also noted a major change in Charlie's demeanor around the time of the bump. He was displaying a level of stress and anxiety that was not present before the bump, evidencing that his story about being extorted the whole time is false. June Mchinda noticed these changes in Charlie's behavior as well, but she also noted a major change in this defendant's demeanor after the bump. Although she didn't know about the bump, around this time she observed the defendant to be a mess. She had a swollen face, was crying, and said she was on painkillers for stress. On the balcony of the Icon, which I'm not sure this is the right balcony, but some high-rise, the defendant told June Mchinda she felt Danny was haunting her from the grave. Why would she make that statement unless she felt guilty about having wronged Dan Martell?
Yeah.
So keeping that all in mind, let's see if the other evidence in the case makes sense with this Charlie version of events that this defendant has adopted. Starting with his statements to Catherine McBanois at the Dolce Vita restaurant. Charlie says to Catherine McBanois, if they had evidence, we'd have already gone to the airport.
Did Harvey swallow real hard just now? Harvey's really nervous. He's like, I don't think this is gonna work. I'm telling you, this man also has blood on his hands. There is no way that he does not.
Even if they bug your phone, you're still not talking about any of this. Like his mother, Charlie emphasizes that the co-conspirators should not talk about what they know on the phone. The cops would only bug your phone to get information about the murder, right? I mean, why are we not talking on the phone if we had nothing to do with it? Why are we not talking on the phone if we're being extorted and we're the victims here? Why are we not reporting it to the police if we're being extorted and we're the victims here? If the cops are listening, we're not reporting it to the cops because we're afraid they'll come kill us if we do that. Well, talk about it on the phone. If they're listening, they'll hear and they'll know you're being extorted, but they don't do that because it's bull. Discussion about how he's going to start arming himself. So Charlie says at Dolce Vita, I'm going to start, I don't remember his words exactly, but he's going to start carrying a gun and he's prepared to shoot. And he goes through a scenario where, he might have to kill somebody in his driveway and the cops will not ask any questions because he's a dentist. If he's been an extortion victim for 2 years, why is he just now starting to carry a gun? And then he says, if somebody comes up to me asking for money in my house, he's going to shoot them. This is the same guy that's been too paralyzed by fear over the last 2 years to report his victimization to the police or to anyone. This is a guy of considerable resources that could, get some muscle or some help or some something. Not just roll over and open his safe and give all his money to some girl that's not even armed. This is a tough guy that would never tolerate somebody coming up to him at his house and asking for money. But he's talking to the woman who supposedly did that exact thing, came into his house and asked him for money. He doesn't mention, well, I gave you the money, but I'm not giving this guy any money. It's like they don't mention this extortion. So you see the problem. But this defendant doesn't see the problem. She says that it's the truth. The truth is out, thank goodness. The truth is out after we remained silent for so long. The defense does not have to prove anything, but through cross-examination and the witnesses they called, they chose to kind of suggest, maybe Charlie was involved, maybe Wendy was involved. But there's no connection to our client. But Charlie's story was that he and his mom were involved in the sense that they were extorted by Catherine Magbanua, so they knew who did the killing. They just didn't speak up because they were scared, because they were being extorted. Donna Adelson calls Charlie's story the truth when it suits her to support her son and proclaim his innocence during his trial, but now she kind of wants to distance herself from that because it's a ridiculous story. It's not the truth. The truth wasn't out. Don't let her distance herself. She adopted that statement as the truth. She stuck with it.
Please approach. I'll take you to the jury
Donna
room.
is doing this pretend oh my god, I can't believe what's happening here. The reality is in her head is how did she get all this stuff? Probably how does she know all of this? Man, she's really good at connecting dots. This is really bad for me. But on the outside, she's trying to make it look oh my god, how horrible. This woman doesn't know anything. It's such a bad act. I'm sorry, Donna, you're not a good actress. Ugh.
Yeah, leave everything right there on the chairs, please.
Everyone can be seated. Ms. Fulford, you may argue what you're seeking to raise.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, so we have an issue.
Comments being made in the closing argument of the state, and I don't like to interrupt closing, so I apologize for that. But there have been several comments that have been made that are burden shifting and commenting on my client's right to remain silent. She's stood before this jury and said that the defense has some other version. She said this in a text, but now they're saying something different. We don't have an obligation to answer any of this. She's insinuating to the jury that we're going to come up there and provide her version of events. She chose not to testify.
Mr. Kappelman, any argument concerning this?
Ms. Adelson has made adoptive admissions and has suggested other alternative theories that have been developed through cross-examination. I'm entitled to comment on those theories.
Concerning this, Ms. Fulford, as I've heard the closing argument and the evidence, my recall of it and my notes as well as to what occurred during the trial, there were adoptive admissions as it relates to statements that occurred during Charlie Adelson's trial. While she has not testified, the prosecutor has not made any direct comment on her not testifying in this trial. Also, as well, it is clear she has no burden to prove anything. The state is entitled to argue reasonable inferences from the evidence in the record. We will take a break at this time. If the defendant needs to use the restroom, bailiffs, please take her. If anyone else needs to, please stretch your legs or use the restroom at this point as well. Ms. Kappelman, on my clock, you have 35 minutes remaining. The objection is overruled. Ms. Kappelman, you may continue with your argument.
When the bump happens, you get to observe this defendant and her son in action working the problem. Neither of them would ever just lay down and let themselves get victimized by anyone. The bump is an actual recorded example of how these two act when they're threatened by an extortionist, in this case a blackmailer, and it's the complete opposite of how they say they've been acting before in the previous extortion. Several other things to note about this. Let's just compare the two extortions, the prior one and the one with the bump. So when the bump happens, they resist, right? They don't open their safe out. It's only $5,000 compared to thousands and thousands of dollars they've been paying. $5,000, they don't pay. They resist. They take action. There are in-person meetings between Charlie Adelson and his mother, Charlie Adelson and Catherine Magbanua, and eventually with Dad too, about the bump and what to do about it.
With
The
Dad?
defendant eventually
They talked to Harvey about this? That's big.
downloads a recording app and records a call to the would-be blackmailer. So she records this call, an action that wasn't taken in the 2 years that they were being extorted previously. Charlie tells Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump, although he never mentioned being extorted over the previous 2 years to Ryan Fitzpatrick. They investigate the bump. This defendant questions every aspect of the undercover. His look, his words, his behavior. You know, it's done like that, it's not done like that. Charlie enlists Catherine Magbanua to find out who it is and to handle it, right? Charlie says he's not going to take it lying down. He threatens Nazi shit if they mess with his family. Katie, I don't care what I spend. You'd better kill him because he's going to be a big problem. If he can't do it, I'll have someone else do it. Now these guys want an extra $5,000. You're going to kill him when you've been paying, I don't know how many, $100 and some odd thousand over the past 2 years. You weren't killing anybody then. They don't pay the money. If Mrs. Adelson has been blindly writing these checks every 2 weeks for 2 years, and her son has been paying additional monies each month on the layaway plan to the extortionist, and they've done nothing to investigate it, nothing to report it, nothing to stop it, but now they're going to launch a full-scale investigation over $5,000 more dollars? They don't call out Catherine Magbanua. According to Charlie and this defendant, they've been paying Magbanua now for 2 years, or at least funneling money through her. And here Charlie is talking to the person that's been collecting that money over all those months. But at no point does he acknowledge in that Dolce Vita recording or even allude to this long history of payments he's been making to her. This long history of extortion that's been ongoing through her. While they're still in the restaurant, Charlie gives Magbanua instructions. Say my friends have no idea what you're talking about, and frankly, I don't know what you're talking about, but the name sounds familiar of who's incarcerated, so I'm going to give you something as charity to help the less fortunate, but do not contact these people again or they're going to the police. The whole time you're talking, just say, I don't know what's going on, and only use the words help and charity. Charlie proceeds to give Magbanua a whole lecture on blackmail, which is pretty ironic in light of the fact that his defense is she was blackmailing me or extorting him. And these are just a selection of the incriminating quotes from the Dolce Vita recording that you all heard. After the meeting with Magbanua at Dolce Vita, Charlie calls the defendant in call F and tells her he had coffee with a friend and gave her some good relationship advice. Well, at this time, Catherine Magbanua is living with Sigfredo Garcia. Relationship advice. This means he talked to Katie and she's going to talk to Garcia and they're going to handle it and deal with the problem. Donna seems to understand this from the use of the term relationship advice. In call G, she's less sure than Charlie that this is the police. That's his theory. She's worried it might not be accurate. She says she has a different theory. He assures her repeatedly it's being handled, there's nothing to worry about, don't freak out. Magbanua does not want to make that phone call though, and neither does Garcia. And you hear him pretty emphatic on that wire that he's not making that phone call. But everybody starts lying to each other about having called it because everybody wants to reassure the co-conspirator up the chain that it's all good, I'm handling it, it's not going to come back on us. Charlie expresses concern that if they pay the money, they'll create a monster that will demand more and more and more money. And the defendant replies to that exactly. So these calls go up and down the train cars, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Donna to Charlie to Katie to Garcia and back, over and over again. In call R, Charlie is telling Magbanua that he has a very nice gift for Garcia's birthday. So if we think about his defense, the defense that this guy is extorting him after he, on his own, went and killed the ex-brother-in-law.
I have a
He
gift
sent by
for
a
you.
birthday gift for the guy?
Yeah.
The man that he knows killed Dan Markel?
Oh God, so bad.
And Donna says this is the truth. The truth is out. Once Charlie and the defendant finally decide for sure that the bump is an undercover as opposed to a real gang member, bad guy, you have never seen two people so happy to be under investigation for first-degree murder in your whole entire life. They convince themselves that they're untouchable. It's just the FBI fishing. They don't have anything on us. If they had anything on us, we'd already be at the airport. They're thrilled about it. Even on the call that the defendant staged and recorded to the Undercover where she's proclaiming her innocence, it's pretty interesting the words that she chooses. For example, she says, "I'm out of the loop." How odd is that statement? It implies she knows there's a loop and she's not in it. The evidence has shown that the co-conspirators in this case were all on a need-to-know basis for their own protection. That's why Catherine Magbanua wasn't shown the murder instructions. That's why no Adelson had any contact with the hitmen, and that's why the defendant didn't attend the murder meetings with Charlie Adelson and his mother. They were insulating each other. She was out of the loop on the stuff that the Undercover was talking about. You know, my brother in Broward, Louis Rivera, she didn't know anything about Louis Rivera. She was out of the loop on that. But she was in the loop on Catherine Magbanua. She knew an ex-girlfriend met Catherine Magbanua. She knew that Catherine Magbanua needed to give relationship advice to deal with the problem with her baby daddy. She was in the loop on paying for this murder, and she was in the loop with Charlie to get a win for the Adelson family. In May of 2016, after the bump, the defendant stops writing checks. Stops. The bad guy comes up to you and wants more money, so what do? You stop writing the checks you've been writing for 2 years under some threat? She's still not going to the police, but apparently she's not scared anymore. She's going to stand up to him and stop writing the checks, okay?
So, yeah, think of how ridiculous this is. You're writing checks by these people you're being extorted by, happily doing it. And then suddenly you get extorted again, allegedly. Hey, give us more money. And then he's like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to stop writing checks altogether. Make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Why? Isn't it because she's gotten spooked, because she's figured out this is law enforcement, and they're getting close? In May and June of 2016, Garcia and Rivera are arrested. The news of this makes it all the way to Rob Adelson's operating room. When Rob next speaks to his mother, he says, "Hey, they got the guys. They arrested the guy that shot Danny." Getting no response, he brings up the matter again, like, "Did you hear they got the guys that killed Danny?" And she responds, "I've got to go," and she hangs up. That is the last time that Rob Adelson has talked to his mother. Because he knew, and she knew he knew.
How
A couple other
devastating.
problems for the defense.
An entire family destroyed. And remember how I said in the video where Rob testified, where I was like, well, did Rob have a hand in it? I think Rob was very smart to distance himself from this family. His own flesh and blood, his own mother, his own father, his sister, his brother Charlie. Rob probably is the smartest one of the entire family. He is practicing medicine up in New York, and he's probably for the best. It's probably for the best. He's good for it, because I would not be surprised if Wendy and Harvey are going to be next on the chopping block for the prosecution of a conspiracy to commit murder of Dan Markel, and it seems like Rob's hands are the cleanest. Rob knows nothing. He never tried to learn things about it, which was probably a very smart move. He cooperated with law enforcement, which, again, as a criminal defense attorney, I would say never cooperate, never give them free evidence. But I mean, Rob was like, but I don't know anything. Like, what do you expect me to do, Mr. Foreman? If I was advising him, I would still tell him don't talk to the police, but he was probably like, I don't know anything, so I'm just going to talk to them, which he got lucky. They probably could have gone after him. Police love charging people first and asking questions later. Rob, I guess they really had so much nothing on Rob, they decided to just let him go. But just the name, the fact that he's an Adelson, is difficult. It's probably difficult for him to maybe drum up business if he's in his own practice. I mean, people who know about this case probably would not want to associate with him now. It's really sad what Donna and Wendy and Charlie have single-handedly destroyed their family. The kids are growing up without a father and probably soon without a mother, now already without a grandmother, pretty soon maybe without a grandfather. Their uncle is in jail. They only have one uncle in New York who practices medicine, Rob. It's so stupid. They really thought they were going to get away with it. And they did for a minute, for a couple of years, until things started going down.
I want to point out, as far as this whole Charlie story goes, these are kind of mind benders, so bear with me. In 2016, after the
And don't forget, like this video, comment below, subscribe to the channel.
arrest of Garcia and Rivera, but before the arrest of Magbanowa, there's a text indicating, this is Charlie to Donna. Charlie says, basically that his lawyer was meeting with Garcia's lawyer. If Garcia acted alone and then extorted Charlie, why is Charlie's lawyer meeting with Garcia's lawyer? This is your extortionist. In fact, regardless of whatever the defense is, why are the two of them meeting? Unless they have common interests. And while Charlie's lawyer is at this meeting, he runs into Magbanowa. Magbanowa hasn't been arrested yet. She's up there seeing Garcia's lawyer. Well, why is she doing that? According to Charlie's story that this defendant adopted, Magbanowa is not in on it. She's a victim too of Garcia, her baby daddy, who's a bad dude. Why is she up at his lawyer's office? And when they learn that Magbanowa was up there, Charlie says, oh, my lawyer ran into Magbanowa while he was up there. He said she was nice and pretty, and Donna says, just like all your girlfriends. Well, why isn't she saying, what do you mean? Why is she up there? I thought she was a victim of Garcia, just like us. All right, so here's another text. This one's from August of 16. In this one, Charlie and the defendant are discussing a newspaper article in the Tallahassee Democrat, which talks about a drug dealer that the killers had contact with when they were here in Tallahassee from Miami. And somehow Charlie deduces this drug dealer is going to be the state's star witness, and they're basically spitballing alternative defenses. This is August of 2016. They've known, supposedly, who the killer was. The truth came out that the killer was Garcia and that they knew about it since the time of the killing. But here they are saying, well, maybe a drug dealer killed Danny and a drug deal gone bad. And this is because the extortion thing hadn't been invented yet. The extortion thing didn't get invented until right before Charlie's trial in 2023, when he's trying to think of what he's going to say from that witness stand to explain all the evidence against him. Rivera gives a proffer. That's on September 30th of 2016. Magbanowa gets arrested October 1st, 2016. You would think that if Charlie's story was the truth, he would be sleeping well for the first time in a long time, knowing that these folks that were taking his money
Are finally
taking his
caught.
mother's checks were off the streets.
They're
and
gone.
behind bars.
Happy days.
But to the contrary, you've heard evidence that he started freaking out around that time, and so did the defendant. Right?
Because they knew that they were next.
His behavior became erratic. He became angry, paranoid, stressed. Per June, he got a second phone. He started sleeping with a bag of clothes by the bed. He started communicating with her via WhatsApp. In April of 2022, Charlie gets arrested. In that Dolce Vita restaurant recording, he repeatedly refers to the bump as a blackmail attempt. He uses the word blackmail on the Dolce Vita recording. But in trial, he switches that up to extortion, claiming that he and his mom have been extorted by the hitmen. That was going on since 2014. But interestingly, in October 16th of 2023, so just 7 days before Charlie's trial started, this defendant, Donna Adelson, Googled the difference between blackmail and extortion. And the difference is that blackmail is the threat to expose some dirt on somebody. I know something about you, and if you don't pay up, I'm going to expose the dirt. Whereas extortion is the threat to harm somebody. You don't pay up, I'm going to harm you. Obviously, when they developed this defense in preparation for Charlie's trial, they realized the term blackmail was not a good word for them because it indicates they were somehow involved. You got to have some dirt. Okay, it needs to be extortion, threat of harm. We're totally innocent. They did this on their own. They came to us. They extorted us. The defendant doubles down on this. So yeah, she said the truth is out, the truth is out. What does that really mean? Well, she doubles down on it when she writes that script for the witness, Drina Bernhardt, who she solicited to come in here and perjure herself to you all. What does she write in the script? Extort, underlined. This script is Charlie's story. She's again adopting it by writing it out for her witness that she's trying to recruit to come in and deliver it to y'all. Which of course backfires. And according to the defense investigator who interviewed Bird, her first story involved the word extort. Which is pretty unusual. Regardless of what you think of Drina and Bird, it's clear what the defendant was trying to do with them. I mean, when Drina Bernhardt had that script, and it read exactly like Charlie's whole story, with the exception of the part where he told his mom, it was in the defendant's handwriting. That was very compelling evidence that this defendant was trying to buy herself some witnesses. I do want to talk about one more piece that has to be dealt with regarding this whole story of the extortion. And that's that Wendy wasn't in on it. Okay, there's a text November 1st of 2023. So this is after the truth comes out. This defendant texts Wendy Adelson, her daughter, and acknowledges that Wendy doesn't know anything about all this extortion stuff. And like, sorry, we had to keep it from you for so long kind of thing. If Charlie's defense was the truth, and Charlie and this defendant knew there was a threat to Wendy and her kids from the people that killed Dan, it's a little shocking that they failed to mention it to her. Instead, they let her and the boys move to Miami, where the bad guys were, and, you know, walk up and down the street without any extra protection or even knowing that the killers knew who they were and had threatened their lives and lived there in Miami.
Yeah. So we found who the killers are and where they live. So you know what? You should move closer to them, because you know if they took Dan out, maybe you're next, and everybody will be a big happy missing persons family. Like what?
The defendant also acknowledges in this November 1st text. Okay, on that text, which is in evidence, it says, "You know I'm next." This is the defendant to Wendy Adelson. "You know I'm next, but that won't happen. I'll take care of that." An important insight into her state of mind when you're considering this evidence about her flight to Vietnam.
Yep.
All right, 11/6/23, Charlie's jury is deliberating. The defendant gets angry about Wendy sending prayer hands. I guess, you know, your brother's on trial for his life and you're sending prayer hands, an emoji. She says, protected his sister for years. Protected her? Protected her from what? Would he need to protect her from the knowledge that they were being extorted? Or does it make more sense that the protection that's referred to is the murder, and the fact that this defendant is a little angry that Wendy doesn't seem to appreciate what she views as a huge sacrifice that her brother has made for her and her benefit. Wendy's not charged. This was all for her. 11/6/2023, Charlie is convicted. Nothing about the extortion defense adds up for Charlie, and it doesn't add up for Donna Adelson either. It's true that she did not pull the trigger. She's guilty of first degree murder as a principle, which we talked about at jury selection, about how a party who assists in the murder can be charged and convicted the same as the person that pulled the trigger, even if they're not physically present when the trigger's pulled, which is not disputed that she was not. And you all agreed to follow that law, even if you ended up not liking it, right? I don't know if anyone admitted to not liking it, but you don't really know if you're going to like it or not until you have to make a decision. If you don't like it, you still must apply it. I know that I can trust you to do that. We talked in jury selection about the difference between direct and circumstantial evidence, and it's true that this is largely a circumstantial case. You might recall my powdered donuts example. Had direct evidence that it was the kid not covered in powdered donuts, but we agreed that being covered in the powdered donuts was pretty good evidence that that's the child that ate the donuts. This case is not entirely circumstantial. I mean, she's covered in powdered donuts, don't get me wrong. But there is direct evidence as well, and I want to go over those.
This is very important. So up until this point, there was only a peppering occasionally by the prosecutor that, you know, like when the bump happened and Donna's conversation with Charlie via text, via phone, and in person immediately following, and then Charlie, you know, talking to Katie and all that. That was direct evidence of guilt, the way Donna reacted to the bump. Now let's hear, as we are almost concluding, we still have about 10 minutes left, just shy of this closing, and this is going to be where the hammer drops. At least that's where it should. Always finish strong. And I think the prosecutor is not disappointing. I mean, she's brought us all the way to Charlie's conviction, which was only a couple of years ago. And so now, what is the direct evidence? Lady, tell us. I can't wait to hear this, truly.
To Rob, when told that he'd already spoken to the police, she says, "Will, you don't know anything anyway." That's direct evidence. You can consider that as direct evidence. To Charlie, after being handed an article about Dan Markel's murder, it involves both of us. It involves the two of us. Number 3, 44 checks to the killer, signed by Donna Adelson. Catherine McVanoa admits she was in a plot to kill Dan Markel. And she got 44 checks, and they were all signed by this woman. Next, that license plate number. She had the car, make, model, and license plate in her 2014 planner. Her statements to Bird, she admitted she did what she was accused of. The script written by this defendant in this defendant's handwriting for Drina Bernhardt to come in here and deliver to y'all about stuff that wasn't true. She also speaks in code. Innocent people do not speak in code, ladies and gentlemen. And consider the things she didn't do. She didn't want to talk on the phone. She didn't want to talk in the apartment. She did not want to send a picture of the bump flyer to Charlie. She didn't say the name of Dan Markel. Anywhere on that wire, she did not say his name. Dan, Danny, Gibbers, that asshole, nothing. Why not? And she didn't go to the police. Nice, normal, Jewish grandmother approached on the street about a murder and an extortion attempt. She didn't go to the police? Why not? After Charlie's found guilty, the defendant sends this text to Wendy Adelson. Your brother protected you for years. Now you are not guilty. Your lawyer took very good care of you. You can bury me in the dress that I bought for Lincoln's bar mitzvah. Does not sound at that moment as if she's totally committed to attending the bar mitzvah. You heard that open line call where she's making plans to either flee or kill herself. She is distraught over the verdict. And she's distraught over the knowledge that she's next. The defense has tried to sell you that her emergency fast-track visa and one-way ticket to a non-extradition country was a vacation.
Yeah, because when I think about vacation destinations, I don't know about you all, but when I think about vacation destinations, my first choice is Vietnam. Second choice, Cambodia. And third choice usually is Zimbabwe. Come on, folks. It's just too easy. She made it too easy, especially at the end there. Donna.
On November 7th of 2023, this defendant Googled a list of U.S. extradition treaties. She was looking for a non-extradition country, and she booked a ticket to one with a stop in another non-extradition country. She applies for a fast-track emergency visa for Vietnam. I wanted it the fastest I can get it. She indicates a 30-day visa is not sufficient. She requests for the longest visa, which is 90 days, which is past the bar mitzvah date. She tries to get Wendy to help with business assistance. And when Wendy doesn't respond, she ends up asking her friend, Annie Cunningham, who y'all met in court. She says, I can't say exactly why, but we need you guys to come here, both of you. Wendy's not responding to us, and we have an issue that we cannot discuss over the phone. Why can't you discuss it over the phone? You're just going on vacation. Annie responds, basically, just say the word. When they leave for the airport, Harvey leaves this note dated 11/12/23 for Wendy regarding what is needed to sell some property, a gun. Donna makes notes in her planner to have Wendy have the lawyer tell Charlie where they are on the lawyer's private line so the call will not be recorded. Why not? Y'all are going on vacation. You're coming back. You're not fleeing. There's also a note in her planner to cancel disability insurance. That doesn't seem like something one does when they're going on vacation. There's a note, tell Wendy due October expenses, child support through mid-November 2025. They're presumably for Charlie's son planning to pay child support 2 years in advance. So this is made in 23. All right, November 13th, 2023, the defendant is arrested trying to board a one-way flight to a non-extradition country. I mean, y'all decide if it's a vacation. This is a conspiracy. I mean, this took a lot of thought and effort. It's not a typical murder case. The defendant and her son set this up in a way that was designed to protect them. The main benefit of the structure of this conspiracy is that each party can insulate or distance themselves from each other. The primary risk of a conspiracy is that you're doing it with other people, right? You can get caught. Somebody can squeal. Somebody could give you up. And that's why the conspiracy is not shaped like this. Rather, they're not all huddled up together. They're going to be more like train cars. This is the way we see the communication flow throughout the course of the conspiracy. The best way to insulate yourself from your co-conspirators is to organize the conspiracy like a train car, with each car only communicating with the one in front and the one behind. That way, if someone gets caught or cooperates with law enforcement, they won't have enough information on you to give you up. And it's also very important to position yourself within the conspiracy such that those that have the most information on you are those most loyal to you. And that is exactly what
That's a good point,
Donna
actually.
Adelson did. To be guilty of conspiracy, it's not necessary for the defendant to say any particular word or do any particular act.
Circumstantial is enough.
But in this case, she did do that. We have all those words and acts that we went over that directly tie her. They are direct evidence tying her to this conspiracy, plus all the powdered sugar dust. Don't let the way she thought she was going to get away with this be the way she gets away with it. Render a verdict that does justice. Find her guilty. Thank you.
That's powerful. That was very, very powerful. And folks, let me tell you, if I'm sitting on this jury and I just heard all of that without even, like, let's say this was opening statement. Let's just pretend for a second. I know it wasn't. I know it was closing argument. But let's say it was opening statement for a second. And I just heard all of this, and I'm about to be, introduced to all of this evidence, and then I have to make a determination. That was powerful. Just as an opening statement, it would have been powerful. Now, this is closing argument. They've already heard all the evidence. The jurors probably already made up their minds. This is just like a summary. And I wish we could see the jurors' faces as they react to the prosecution's closing. That was powerful, folks. That was really, really powerful. And I will say this on top. I believe, and I'm already going to make a prediction here because you know what's next. You know that the defense is up next and we're going to cover it. And again, if you've already seen it, it doesn't matter. You have not seen it through my eyes. And by God, I am going to have probably so much commentary about how poorly the defense is about to do, because I've already seen this defense attorney, and I know it's the female that's going to be closing, not the male, and she is just so bad. Her opening was atrocious. Her cross-examinations were horrid. I didn't even cover a single witness from the defense's case because it was pointless. They only had like a couple. It was like the divorce attorney and some other, I think, and that's it. An expert, I think, of some sort. And the prosecution spent 5 seconds on their expert during her closing, which is the smart move because the expert contributed nothing to the trial. So to hear the defense scramble, folks, buckle up because this was amazing. The prosecution's closing was incredible. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was succinct, and I know 2 hours, how can it be succinct? It was succinct. It took a long time to tell the story. It's a story that spans more than a decade when you really begin at the beginning. It's like 2009, 2010, like when Dan and Wendy meet in 2006 or whatever it was. And then Charlie getting convicted in 2023, and now here we are in 20. I mean, it's almost 2 decades. How you can't cover 20 years worth of stuff in half an hour or an hour or something like that. So the judge allotted a couple of hours for closing. And she fit within those 2 hours. There was an objection, but for the most part, she fit within those 2 hours. And now the defense is going to have 2 hours, and we're going to do 2 parts for the defense's closing. And I assure you, folks, I will probably not be able to stop pausing because I'm going to have so many things to say. I had a lot of things to say during the prosecution's closing, of course, as you all obviously saw, but it was just very good. There wasn't like a whole lot of, I don't have like almost any critiques or criticisms of the prosecution's closing. I guarantee I am going to have so much to say about the defense's closing. And spoiler alert, for those of you who don't know, well, actually, maybe I shouldn't spoil it, because maybe you don't know what the verdict was, and you're just watching this blind, so I don't want to ruin it for you. So watch the defense's closing, and then listen to the verdict, and you will see what I mean, because it's... I'm looking forward to making those 2 videos, and people have said I should cover Kelsey Fitzsimmons. She is a police officer that was allegedly in an altercation, and she got shot in the chest, but she survived, and she was in the hospital for a couple of months recovering, and she's being charged for like attempted homicide of a Boston police officer. It's a really messy case, and she was pregnant at the time, we've just learned. So I'm recording this on September 18th. This video may not premiere for a couple of days, 2025. So anyway, folks, I appreciate all of you. I hope you all learned something. I hope this was educational. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.